welcome everyone to our meeting with Cheyenne Thornton.
Hello.
Welcome to you too. I didn't find you. Obviously, you were always there. You were not lost. But I did find you on Twitter. And I've been following you for, I don't know how long. It's been a long time. And I love all of your posts on Twitter. If you have not followed Cheyenne, here we go. Show that. There we go. That's Cheyenne's Twitter handle. Okay, so Cheyenne is from not from New York, but lives in New York. Are you from New York? Okay. Lives in the Bronx now.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And is working on a master's in fine arts.
Yep.
And what college is that?
Long Island University in downtown Brooklyn.
Awesome. And you are working to become a screenwriter, right?
Yes.
And that's amazing. And can you tell me what I missed on my introduction of you? Veteran, you're a veteran.
Yes, I spent 4 years in the Navy. I was an aircraft mechanic hi Tara. I was an aircraft mechanic from 2010 to 2014. I joined the military so I can go to college and hauled ass afterwards. And after that, I spent a few years working in the beauty industry my dream at the time was to be a hair colorist. And I underestimated the fact that you have to talk to clients. So that didn't go well.
You know what? You would have been my perfect hair person, because that is the one reason I don't like going to the salon is because you have to talk. And it takes a long time to get your hair done. It's 2 hours of talking.
My best clients, that was their compliment for me. That they after a long day, they were like, I don't want to talk to anybody. But everybody else, they just wanted conversation. I was like, I don't know what to say. And it just got awkward. So I came out of that and I went to school. And at first I went to business school because my dream was to be a hairstylist. I wanted to open a salon.
Right. And
after that didn't work, I decided to go back to my original plan in life, which was writing. So now I'm I got my bachelor's in English, and now I'm pursuing my MFA.
That's awesome. Tara, no, you cannot be the president. Nobody voted you the president to be the Cheyenne Thornton fan club. We have to have a meeting on that first. Let's slow your horses on that one. Maybe I want to be the president. I love Tara. Okay, Cheyenne, tell us about your life growing up through school. We want to hear all of the things, Cheyenne Thornton, growing up at home, at school. Tell us everything.
Well, now I'm 30, but I was born in New York. I have 4 brothers and sisters. And when I was 5, my family moved to Georgia. So I spent most of my childhood growing up in the South. New York family, everybody, half my family just all transported down there. So we were the weird people. We ate different. We spoke differently. We even
walked differently. You talked everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
In my household specifically, my brother and I, we were. Well, most of my brothers are neurodiverse. They, diagnosis-wise, they all have, not all of them, most of them have ADHD.
Mm.
I highly suspect one of my younger brothers is also autistic, but that's a whole other ballgame. And we grew up in a family that was like a lot of families around us, a lot of generational poverty, south side of town, Black family. I grew up in a household with just my grandmother. And for me, it was a little different because where my grandmother worked, she was able to get me into predominantly white schools. So growing up as a neurodiverse Black girl, masking was a norm, I guess. Masking, I guess, code switching. So I guess when it comes to me and identifying as autistic, I've always been in this place where I've just run under the radar. People already saw me as different, so they didn't see the other differences.
Wow. Let me hold on. Let's pause on that. We take pauses sometimes. You are already othered so much that they didn't, yeah, that makes sense. And like masking, like, was just basically how you lived. I mean, did you even notice that you were masking after a while? Like, you just, obviously that word wasn't around back then, but
I knew that I was masking, but to me, my masking and code switching were the same thing.
Right.
Because I was already in a culturally different place growing up in the South. I was already the one of a few Black kids in my school.
Your grandma probably did that because the school was better. And so she was thinking that she was helping you out by that, but it comes at a price.
Yeah. And so, and then also, especially in the 90s, growing up with a brothers that were more, I guess, fit stereotypes of neurodiverse children, and I didn't. My family didn't even realize. They just thought that I was quiet. They thought that I was either overly sensitive sometimes or really rude, very direct, or I had a habit of only speaking when spoken to. So people didn't realize a lot of the challenges that I was facing as a child. And honestly, when you don't know why you're different, you don't know how to explain that you're different.
Right.
So it was just, to me, growing up with these struggles, I didn't realize that everybody else didn't have these struggles. I just thought that I had different interests, different focuses. I stayed in the library. I played an instrument. So I was always to myself.
Mm-hmm. I've heard so many people say, and I've even said it myself. I haven't even. I only first started calling myself neurodivergent like a year ago because I didn't even know that included ADHD until then, and it was like I can remember myself thinking like, well, isn't that true for everybody? Doesn't everybody do that? Or, you know what I mean? Like and I've heard so many people say that, like, well, doesn't everybody have that? You know?
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot. Okay, so continue. Sorry.
Oh, no, go, please go.
So growing up, you obviously didn't have any accommodations, obviously. Did your brothers have accommodations?
My brother, I have a love-hate relationship with the term special needs. My brothers, some of them were just seen as gifted, and some of them were seen as special needs.
There was no 2E back then. There was no twice exceptional back then.
No, I didn't hear that until I was much older.
Yeah.
But one of my brothers, the one that they would label special needs, he didn't have accommodations. Instead, they would put him in these rooms with other disabled children where they really, instead of accommodating these children, they would just leave them. They wouldn't support them at all. So it was almost like they did not care about their quality of education, when a lot of them, they just had learning differences.
I call that segregation.
It's what it was. It really was.
And it's what is happening still now. Like if you, it's as if they divide them up. Like, okay, these kids, okay, well maybe they can make it in this environment. These kids, oh, we're gonna put them over here, and yeah.
And a lot, like my brother, I guess that was spent the majority of his childhood in that environment. It came once we grew up and like got into adulthood, we realized that his only problem was he had dyscalculia. He had a lot of behavioral outbursts as a child, and I would watch them medicate him, put him in these therapies, and send him to programs, and he would get into fights and get arrested. And it took until like his last year of high school for people to realize this only happened in math class. It only would happen in math class. And he spent his entire education being segregated. And he would tell people, he was like, you think I'm stupid? I just don't understand. And there was no accommodations for him. So it was, I have a very love-hate relationship with the term special needs and the acknowledgement of what accommodations are. So I didn't receive any at all, and to me, he received the wrong type.
Right. Oh, you said like so many mouthfuls just in that one thing. I mean, it was like he was on the school to prison pipeline right then.
Yes.
He rode the school to prison pipeline. I don't even know like where it ended, but I mean, that is like, you have these kids that we're going to deem them aggressive. We're going to tell, we're going to call the cops on them. We're going to, they're going to get arrested. We're not going to give them any accommodations. We're going to let them think that they're dumb. And that's the cycle.
Yes.
How did school go for you? Like growing up, you didn't have any supports.
How did it go? I loved school. Like I can stay in school until the day I die, if given the choice. If I was financially stable enough to, I would get every degree possible. I just love school. I love learning. But school for me, the difficulty is usually when it comes to standards. Like for instance, growing up going to math classes, I always would fail assignments, fail tests. I would fail simple things that I knew because I wouldn't be able to do things the way the way is required. So for instance, at least in my schools, the teacher would show you formulas. They'd say, show your work, and they would show you how to show the work their way. I had a habit of, because I had an older brother, he was 3 years older than me, and he would bring all of his workbooks home, and I would learn out of his workbooks, but they were 3 years ahead of me. So I would learn these things, and then I would get to school and learn things that I already knew, but I was doing them either the way that my brother's workbooks would show me or the way that I would understand myself. And so I would always fail these things because I couldn't show it the way my teachers required.
Yeah.
Or I had a habit of, I would do some of the problems in my head and like jot notes on the side. But I would come up with the right answer. Mm-hmm. And they would be like, well, show me how you did it. And I wouldn't be able to explain in a way that they would understand.
Well, you can watch me. Like, yeah. If you can watch me do it, I'll show you.
Like, give me a test. Like, just give it to me and I can show you how I did it, but I cannot do it the way that you're teaching me. Mm-hmm. And so I would always fail things. Or my biggest thing, I post about this sometimes, is the whole, I don't know how many people's schools would do this, but it would be, you would get in class, first couple of days, they go over the requirements, and they would say things like, participation is 20-30% of your grade. And I was a very quiet kid. I never spoke unless I was spoken to. And half the time when I did, it would take me a minute to put my words together. So teachers would say I was defiant or rude or short with them. And I couldn't describe that it took me a minute to either form the correct words together or say it in a way that didn't sound blunt, or I didn't have anything to say at all.
Or, you don't even trust that teacher to even, it takes trust to be able to even tell them that, like, I just need a minute, or because if you tell the wrong one that, they might think that, oh, well, she doesn't even know what she's talking about. So, and dismiss you. So it does take that trust for teachers to even to be able to say, like, I need a minute, or when I'm telling you this, I'm not being rude. I mean, they come with their own preconceptions. Like my son, he's in 10th grade, 10th grade now, yeah. And they had a participation grade, and he didn't make honor roll because of this participation grade. And he's a talker. Like, he's not going to be like silent in the class. Like, he's a talker, but I think that his excessive talking it dropped him down. And those participation grades are just, so subjective.
They really are. And especially when you are going through your grades, the higher you get to high school. And like for me, I knew that I wanted to go to college, but then coming from a poor family, the only way I'm going to college is with scholarships. Mm-hmm. So I get the senior year, and all these participation grades affect your GPA. So like the teachers would write in my report cards, has potential but doesn't apply to herself, or just little things like that. And so I would watch my grades drop. And to me, it wasn't a reflection of my ability to do the work. It was a reflection of their perception of me and me not meeting their social expectations. Mm-hmm. So once it came time to like applying for scholarships, I didn't qualify for anything. So that's actually
nobody's going to give a rude girl who doesn't know, nobody's like, who doesn't apply herself, like nobody's going to give that girl a scholarship.
Yeah. And that's what it came down to. It was even things that I was interested in, or I would qualify for scholarships based on interest or talent or extracurricular. I played an instrument, but there would always be like GPA minimums. I don't meet any of those because I never talked in class, solely because I didn't talk in class.
Kimberly behaves herself in book club. She's one of my mods. Caroline said that's the best part of hanging out with autistics for me. Someone described something that I had no idea how to describe it. So it's nice to hear that. The show your work part of homework sucked. Everybody's like, yes, yes, yes. Asking NT how they remember information.
Oh, the walking through their brain.
I don't think that anybody would be able to answer that. They would be like,
it just pops up in their head. I swear, like.
They are perplexed and say, I just remember, right? It's a huge reason why I failed many math classes. I was just bad with homework and like follow through. That was just not my jam. Show your work, participate in classes reminds me of my struggles in school so much. I turned everything inward, thinking that the problem was me, and I didn't have the words.
Yeah. Definitely.
Caroline said her too. Has potential, but does not apply herself as the ultimate weapon against ND kids. Man, yes, I am math queen. Thank you very much. No, I'm not. I'm seriously not a math queen at all. But I can figure it out in my own way. I almost lost a scholarship because I couldn't get the motor planning together to type.
I still can't type. I write for my whole degree, and I still type like this.
Oh my gosh.
Like, I know how to type, but my fingers, for some reason, it just doesn't work at all.
It doesn't work. That is funny. Tara said, or do a flip-flop in gym class. I couldn't do the V-sit in gym class, Tara. The V-sit and reach. I'm not that flexible.
No, I'm just too uncoordinated for gym class.
They probably don't think about themselves in that way. Many NT just live life without questioning things like that. To me, it explains things that don't ever have to feel different in that regard. We're done with school. We're not done, but we're done with younger school, and you don't have a diagnosis. You don't have anything.
No. So
tell me about your journey from that to getting your diagnosis. Can you tell us all about those things? You went into the Navy. That's one thing you did.
Yes. One moment. Let me close this door.
Okay.
My cats keep running in here. So after high school, I graduated in 2009. So yay, recession. Couldn't find a job. I got accepted to the school that I wanted to go to somehow, but couldn't afford it. No scholarships. So my way out was the military. I guess this is where I have another love-hate relationship with diagnosis. In the military, you're not allowed in with disabilities, as we see by our last so-called president and his feet.
Feet, that's right. Feet.
You're not allowed to go in if you have any diagnosed disabilities. So because I didn't know that I had disabilities, they let me in.
Allowed in, yeah.
Come to find out, there are a whole lot of autistic people in the military. I can guarantee you that. But I went in, I got my job as an aircraft mechanic. Loved the job. Hated the structure. A lot of micromanaging, a lot of stuff that just did not make sense.
Sorry, that was my alarm.
That was fine. And so while I was in, I got into an accident where during Christmas, I was stationed on the aircraft carrier. And during the holiday seasons, Christmas, New Year's, September 11th, major events, they ramp up security. And at the time I was working security, and I was working these extremely long shifts. And I got ready for work one morning, and I'm driving. It's 4 a.m. on my way, fell asleep at the wheel, and ran off the side of the road. And because of that accident, I guess I triggered a lot of like dormant things in my body that I had no knowledge of. So I started having a lot of problems. And I started seeking help. Nobody would believe me. So I made the decision to come out of the military, which I was coming out anyways to go to school.
Like what kind of problems? Like
I started having my migraines became a real issue. I had a lot of nerve damage and pain in my body. I had a lot of back issues. It wasn't affecting my ability to do work, but the pain was the fact that I wasn't being taken seriously or being checked out or being treated. They just kept feeding me pills and feeding me pills. It was having an effect on my mental health, and it was having effect on the pain. Like nothing was actually being helped.
Oh yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
So
and it's not something they can see. So, and you're a woman, and you're a Black woman. So
a lot of the times they thought it was just me trying to get out of work, and I was just telling them like, yo, there's something wrong. So I ended up coming out, and I thought if I came out and focused on my health and focused on what I really wanted to do, maybe things would be easier. But when I came out, it was just like a chain reaction of one thing after another. And I got into really paying attention to my own body. I started having a lot of problems with my feet, a lot of problems with my veins, a lot of problems with, I guess, neurological differences. And I was like, there's some things going on here.
What's happening. Yeah.
And at the same time, when I'm doing all of this research, I'm realizing that some of the things that I've been experiencing my entire life, I guess everybody else hasn't been. So what ended up happening was I found at one point in time, I was having a lot of vision issues. I had been through 5 pairs of glasses in 5 years. I was having this really horrible vertigo. And this is around the time Facebook groups first came out. They weren't popular. And I found this vertigo support group. I'm still a part of now, actually. And I was like, well, maybe somebody here will
can help me. Yeah.
And I kept going to my doctors, and they would accuse me of being what is it, hypochondriac?
Yes.
Because it was literally just one problem after another, and 9 times out of 10 it was like in a different part of my body.
Right. And they can't see it.
Physically, I do look like, a lot of people ask me, do you play basketball? Even though I'm uncoordinated as hell. Like I look physically fit.
Yeah.
So I went into this group and I was describing these things, and I would describe them to the doctors. And I didn't realize back then that the way I was describing them, people weren't understanding. But then I got into this group and I'm describing them and they're like, have you ever heard of Chiari malformation? And I was like, no, I don't know what that is.
Right.
Look it up. And I was like, well, the only way I'm going to find out if this is what this is if I had an MRI. It's literally a brain condition. So I put it to the back of my head, and these problems just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And at one point in time, I had lost 87 pounds in 10 months. And so I go to my doctors, and my gastro looks at me and goes, well, do you know how many people would love to be 20% body fat? And that was just his response to me. Like, I was like, dude, this has been 10 months. Like, I fit no clothes.
I'm literally melting. I'm like, disintegrating before your eyes. You're telling me that I should be happy about this.
Like, I would take the train to school and I would have to get on the train. I'm sorry?
Was it a man doctor?
Yeah.
I don't know why I asked.
I would take like the train or something to school, and like my motion sickness would get to a point where I would just have to get off and throw up. Sometimes I would just come home. Like, I started missing school. I would go to the ER, all these things. And it got to the point I would go to the ER so much that they knew me by name, and they'd be like, what are you here for now? And it was just like, give me Tylenol and send me home.
And this is at such a vulnerable time in your life, because now you're an adult. But now that I'm a parent, I realize that you were just a baby, 20 in your, 20s, early 20s, whatever, mid 20s. I mean, that does not an adult make.
No, not at all.
And so you're in this vulnerable position where they're treating you like an adult, and you're supposed to be able to navigate all of these things, and you're supposed to be able to trust your doctors to believe you. Okay.
It was just one thing after another. And in all honesty, a lot of the frustration was just not being listened to. Yeah. Like, I understand doubt. I understand asking questions. Like, that wasn't a problem for me when doctors would doubt me. It was the fact that you would doubt me, but not even bother to listen.
Right.
So what ended up happening was I kept going back to this group, and 3 different people suggested this. And I was like, you know what, maybe I should bring this up to a doctor. Brought it up to a doctor, and I didn't say what I thought it could be until the doctor asked me. And I was like, maybe I should answer this.
Right.
And so the doctor asked me.
Flip the coin, like, I don't know if I should even do this. Because if I say something, they're going to think, that I came in here for, I know.
Yeah. And that's what happened. So finally, like, the second time I brought it up, she was like, well, what do you think it is? I was like, well, I'm in the support group, and I've been talking to these people who also happen to have Chiari malformation, and I have a feeling that I may have something in common with them. She accused me of being a hypochondriac, of chasing pills and all of these different things. She was like, no, you're just depressed. Finally, what I ended up doing is I ended up reading a lot of research on it and rewording my complaints in the ways that I was reading it. Took it back to them, and she was like, okay, here's an MRI. Guess what comes up on the MRI?
No way.
And that's exactly what comes up.
Did you even get an apology, or like?
Of course not. But what ended up happening in that situation was, by that point, I had already figured this out. And through all of my research and all of these different things that were going on in my body, the one overlapping thing I kept coming back to was autism. And I was like, in my head, I still had a stereotypical view I didn't think about it. I was like, oh, I'm not autistic. It's not that I saw it in a negative way. It's just me, I didn't match what I see on TV. Because
you had those preconceptions of what autism looked like from the big commercials with the little white boy in the corner. Like, there's nothing around. Like, I think it's a basement. I'm pretty sure he's in. Sitting in the corner, right? Very sad all the time. Yeah.
And then I would like, even if I would like entertain a thought and I would do research, it would always be so negative and always based on deficits and this is a problem and whatnot. And I was like, what is going on? So I ended up signing up for the Chiari Malformation Registry, mainly just for statistical purposes, because I kept reading the statistics that were saying that it was rare in Black women and yada, yada, yada. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sign up for it because I do feel like I kind of have this responsibility too.
Right.
And I still keep coming across autism. Like more stuff is going wrong in my body. And the one thing in common is most of these people are autistic. And what ended up happening was I got a chance to work at a therapeutic horsemanship program here in New York. And
is that like riding horses?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we worked with children with disabilities. And I didn't really think much about the disabilities involved. But once I started working there, the vast majority of them were non-speakers who had high support needs. And two things I realized. One, I didn't actually dislike children. I always thought that I disliked children, and come to find out maybe it's just neurotypical children that I didn't get along with. And two, I had way too much in common with these children.
Right.
And I was just like, hold on, this is a little weird. So it set off, like, I wouldn't say a green light, set off a yellow light in my head, like maybe I should look more into this.
Mm-hmm.
Took it to my doctors, not as a complaint. And I think that was part of the thing was I wasn't going to them as, hey, I'm having problems and I think I'm autistic. It was just like, do you think this is a possibility? And because I wasn't painting it as a problem, they were like, no, you're just chasing a diagnosis. I'm like, I'm not coming to you for a diagnosis. Like, I actually did not start off seeking a diagnosis. It was more of a peace of mind. Because I just kept coming across it and kept coming across it. And I was like, this is starting to make way too much sense, like across my whole life. And you find yourself replaying your entire life in your head. So
did you think that maybe some of it was like, especially when you were having all of these medical issues, like one on top of the other? I mean, I know like with my kids, like when you're not feeling well, like that affects your ability to mask, right? Like, so a lot of these masking that you were doing originally, like throughout your entire life, like once you have these medical situations, did you find that at all? Like now I'm not even able to, I don't know, I don't have a word, but like, I don't have an example, but like now I'm not even able to do this one thing that what used to be so easy for me.
Because my grandmother started saying things like, you're not the same little girl that you used to be. You're not my same Cheyenne. You're not this, you're not that. And I would realize that the things that she was complaining that I was changing for, it was more of things that weren't already natural to me anyways. And I was like, I only did these things to pacify you. I only did these things to satisfy you because if I didn't do them, I was weird. Right. So that was what started helping me zone in on what was masking. I didn't know, like, to me, it was code switching.
Right.
Like I said, I was already a different kid. Like I was the Black kid in white school. I was the northern.
Can you explain code switching to those that don't know?
The simplest way I can think of it is like in neurotypical terms, I guess, would be changing your behaviors to fit into a group so that you're not denied opportunities or you're not ostracized in social situations. It's changing the vocabulary that you use, changing some of your behaviors or habits.
When you get on the phone, it's using a different tone and voice, and you would learn in vocabulary than you would normally say.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And sorry, I lost my train of thought. It was just the more health problems that I had physically, the harder it became to continue to mask.
Yeah.
So I started staying home way more. I already liked solitude, but now it was almost to a point where it was like, it's exhausting going outside. I can't keep it up. Like I just burnt out at that point. And like opportunities are passing me by, expectations are high, like everything that somebody thought that I was, I'm not. And I was tired of hiding things, and it was becoming more difficult to do it, even if I wanted to, which at that point I didn't want to anymore. So then I would say the last straw before I actually was like, no, I know I'm autistic, was finding out more about synesthesias.
Tell me what.
Have you ever heard of like the one that I thought was the only one? There's a whole bunch of them, but have you ever heard of people who like see colors when they hear music? Or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a type of synesthesia. And what happened was I was in a creative writing class, my
I'm writing this down.
sophomore year, I think. And this girl comes in, and we're just sitting there, and I don't know why she asked me, but she was like, "Can I ask you a question?" I was like, "Okay." She was like, "When I say the boy walks down the stairs, what do you see?" I was like, "What?" And she was like, "Do you see a picture of a boy walking down the stairs, or do you see the words?" I was like, "I see the words." She was like, "Do you?" I was like, "Yeah, doesn't everybody?" She was like, "No." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like when people speak, you don't see these words?" I had never heard of that. And she was like, "No, apparently it's weird." So we started asking different people in the class, and they looked at us like we were just weird. And so I was like,
what's an odd question, right? Odd.
And so up until that point, I honestly didn't know what synesthesias were. And I know that all autistic people don't have these or don't experience the same ones. But even all people with synesthesias aren't autistic. So what happened was I ended up looking up all these different synesthesias, and I realized that I experienced a whole lot of these, like in my day-to-day life throughout my entire life. Ticker tape, yes.
Give me another example. Oh yeah, Tara said ticker tape.
So for instance, say I'm speaking with somebody, and they say a boy walked down the stairs. As they're saying it, I see the words appear, like in my mind's eye, I guess is what you would call it.
Like almost like a cartoon, like.
Yeah, sometimes it's coming out of their mouth. Sometimes it's like subtitles. Sometimes it's like, you remember the old airport boards that flip?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like that. It really depends, but I didn't realize that it wasn't a common thing. Feel movement during music. Like there's a bunch of different ones. And that was the one that was like, okay, maybe this is a little different. So the more I got into that, it actually led me into autistic communities. And that's actually how I ended up engaging with autistic communities on Twitter. Is I got on Twitter as a writer. I was like, oh, okay, I'm here for chronic illness. I'm here to look at different writers. And I ran smack dab into EDS and autistic people. And I was like, these people are kind of like me.
They're my people.
Yeah. So then I would go to my doctor, still not as a complaint, not as a problem, but I was like, I really do think that I may be autistic. And at the time I was having a lot of executive functioning problems. And what ended up happening was I would tell my doctor, when they finally somewhat started listening to me, they would ask me things like, what makes you think you're autistic? And it's kind of a hard thing to answer. And they would say it in like testy ways.
Yeah.
So then when I would go to answer, when I feel tested, I start to shut down.
Yeah.
I can't get my words out. I can't.
You're automatically judging me right now, so I'm not going to say anything, right? So say it's going to be wrong.
Yes. So, but what ended up happening was I would answer their questions and I would give examples throughout my entire life. And what I didn't realize I was doing was I was also giving examples of ADHD. I didn't know I had ADHD. I didn't know I was autistic. So I kept giving all of these examples because I'm like, they're just asking me these questions and I don't know exactly what they want me to say.
Right.
So I would give them these examples and then I would say something that was more aligned with ADHD. And they were like, oh, you're not autistic, you have ADHD. And I would be like, no, I don't. I would know if I have ADHD. My brothers have ADHD. And what happened was over years and years and years of me going back, and they were giving me reasons why I couldn't be autistic. But the reasons why they were giving me were very stereotypical. You're a girl. You are an adult.
You look me in the eye. Right.
You're too old or stuff like that. I was like, hold on. Now that doesn't make sense. And that's when I actually started pursuing a diagnosis. It was, in all honesty, had somebody just listened to me, I would never even bother to get diagnosed. So when I finally went to get diagnosed, lo and behold, I have autism and ADHD.
Did you go to a different doctor or did you keep going back? Like
I have lost count of the number of times that I've been to my doctors. I have lost count of the number of times I've had full meltdowns in offices. And they looked at me and said, you just have depression. You just need anxieties, stuff like that. And that just made me more persistent. Right. So I ended up going to a different doctor. They gave me a referral for an ADHD exam. And so when I got there, I said, I'm not taking this unless you also do autism. And that's how I ended up actually being diagnosed. So,
and the doctor was just okay with that. Like, okay, well, I'll give you both.
Yeah. Well, I think I lucked out because the woman that I ended up seeing.
A woman. Okay. Sorry.
Was a woman. She actually listened to me. Like she made it comfortable. She was non-judgmental and she just asked and listened. It wasn't a random question in the dark where I had to fight to find answers. It was like, I could tell she had done this a lot, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So by the time I got to her, I finally got to somebody who at least would listen. And that's how I ended up being diagnosed.
I know Kimberly told me her story about getting diagnosed. And I mean, I think it's a common accusation that, especially for some odd reason, it seems like it's more like women go through this, but that they want benefits from it or something. Like I've heard that so many times. Like,
yeah. Like, I don't know.
You just want to check. Like, there's not enough money in the world. I'm like, well, there is not enough money in the world for that. Like, what? Like, what do you think people are getting rich off of a disability check?
No, like disability was never like a thought in my head. It was really, honestly, it was just peace of mind. And it was, I knew that this was a possibility and nobody was listening to me.
And what they don't understand is if you did get that disability, like if you did, right, you work for that check. Have you ever been to the disability office?
I have, actually.
It's 10 times worse than the DMV. It's not some easy thing. Oh, let me just get this check and lay back.
Yeah, no.
No. Right? Yeah, people rather work for that. But I mean, there's just that. And I saw Caroline was talking about how getting accused of wanting meds, like wanting drugs. And that's another.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so common.
I got to at one point in time where I was being offered meds after meds after meds. I would refuse them. And then I got, like, once I started refusing, like, I had a span of years where I was like, don't prescribe me anything. I will deal with the pain, because, like, they would give me something that maybe it would help sometimes, but even the few that would help would have these side effects where it's like, I can't feel my body anymore.
Right.
So
it's turning off your emotions, but it's turning off the good emotions as well. It's like, yeah.
Mind you, I was a student. Yeah, drug seeking. So it like then it got to a point where because I wouldn't accept the meds, they would say like, "Well, why are you here?" I'm like, "Well, damn, why am I here now? Now you're making me second guess myself."
Right. Why are you here? When people say, you know, high support needs, or when they say high functioning or low functioning, severe, all of these labels, there's so many labels now, right?
Yeah.
Give us your thoughts. Tell us everything.
To me, function labels are bullshit. Support needs are valid. To me, are valid. And I also believe that support needs are fluid. Definitely, some people will need higher support throughout their life more than others. Some people may need higher support now, not so much later, or vice versa. I'm more of the vice versa. To be honest, I share an apartment with my best friend. And if it were not for her, there is no doubt in my mind that I'd probably be homeless by now. I would not still be in school. To me, just whenever I do speak with somebody, like say a parent, and they're like, "Oh, well, you're high functioning," and I'm like, "That's damaging. That's it's incorrect. It's based on perception. It's based on how you see me. You see somebody who can speak with you in terms that you understand most of the time. Maybe it might take me a little while longer. Sometimes I might shut down, but you see a speaking woman who, if need be, I can go find a job, but you don't see the accommodations that I need, or
could you keep the job? You know, or I mean, could you? Like, in all honesty, like, could you keep the job if you were by yourself? You're an adult now, right? Like, that's a question.
Without the support that I have from my best friend, they're probably not. Like even now, she does most of the cooking, she does most of the cleaning in the house, so that I can focus on work or schoolwork. If I had to choose between one or the other, I would either never eat or never do any schoolwork, which I'm always happen to be behind on. Executive functioning is a very big problem that I deal with. And I do need support for things like that. But when out in public, you just see an athletic looking normal girl, I guess. You see somebody who was a veteran, somebody who is in college, who's in grad school. You don't see the support that I need. It may not be the same as your child. It may not be the same as your neighbor or the kid that you went to school with. But at the end of the day, there are certain supports that I need to maintain my lifestyle or to take advantage of other opportunities.
When it's also it also comes down to like your own perspective, right? Like as parents, I can say this for myself, like especially when your kids are little, you can't see past that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whatever your kids are going through this right now, and you just can't see past it. Like in a parent's mind, what they're doing now, it's like, oh gosh, there's, you know, my kid is delayed in this, like super severely delayed because of the milestone charts that I just filled out, right? They don't see past that. Maybe like 10 years from now, it's going to be a different situation, right? 10 years is a long ways to go. And you're a 30-year-old woman. That's like 10 plus 10 plus 10. That's 30 years from now. That doesn't mean that your kid is not still considered high support, like needing high supports or a lot of support or however you want to say it. But it looks a lot different when you're an adult.
A lot of times I think, like, had I been diagnosed as a child and knowing what I know now about myself as an autistic woman, I wouldn't have checked box on any milestone chart. Like, I was always the last to achieve anything in groups of peers. I was always the last to do things in school. I was always the clumsy one, the uncoordinated one, the stupid one. I would like, if had I been diagnosed and had people base their perceptions on me knowing that I was autistic, I would have been like my brother.
You'd have been segregated.
Yeah, I would have.
Who knows? Yeah, right. It's a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword. It is. Because they wouldn't have presumed that you were even capable of doing this. Not everybody, right? We're generalizing, overgeneralizing, but they may not have even presumed that you were capable of whatever it was. So they would just be like, "Oh, it's."
Like, I think about that a lot. People ask me, do I wish I had been diagnosed as a child? I say yes. However, I acknowledge that I have been given certain privileges by not being diagnosed. Like, I would give up everything that I've been able to do just to have known that I was autistic, that I was different. I do have a habit of skin picking, which is a very bad habit. I've always done it my entire life, and it's always been looked at negatively. It does, like, I guess it used to affect my self-esteem and everything, but I would say I'm actually proud of it because I've reached a point in my life where I don't care what people think. It's just something that I do. It's something that I've always done. That's my
weird. You're talking about your skin picking?
Yeah.
I'm a picker.
Like, I've always, like, if you look at the sides, like, my face is, and growing up, I was always made to feel ashamed of it. But now I'm like, I don't care. People are like, you should cover it with makeup. Nope, I'm good.
It's funny, Cheyenne. It's a common phrase in my house. Stop eating yourself. Like, all of my kids are pickers. Like, I'm a picker. Like, I'm picking. Like, it's tragic.
I have no nails. I had nails maybe a total of 2 years of my entire life.
One kid, like, on his feet, like. My husband is always like, "Stop eating yourself. Stop eating yourself." They're all pickers, all of them.
I've tried alternatives. My alternatives were worse than the actual habit. So I was like, you know what, whatever, I'm gonna be myself. Like, people would shame me for my skin picking or nail biting. So at one point in time, I would get Twizzlers, which that started a cavity issue. So, like, it was the habit. I think that was more of what I was craving. So I would just eat Twizzlers all the time, and I would buy bags and bags. And after a while, it's like, yo, I'm ruining my teeth.
If you could give one piece of advice to the parents of newly diagnosed autistic kids, what would you say?
I would say, don't try to fix them. Focus more on support. I guess one of the things right now is people are finally advocating against ABA. To me, like, when I see ABA, I see people trying to make neurodiverse children neurotypical. And to me, it's not like you can hide the label from your child. You can do all these things. Your child will always be autistic. Even if you fear the label, to me, I wish I had been told, or somebody had realized that I was autistic so that I could find people like me. So I would say focus more on support, and let them be children. Just because they're a little different, that's all they are. They're just different. They're not broken. They're not deficient in anything. They're just different. And I would say find positive influences. I would pay, if I had $1 million, I would pay $1 million to have read a book with an autistic child in it as a kid, or seen a movie that wasn't Rain Man. To see something on TV about autism that wasn't inspiration porn, or this autistic kid finally said a word. Like, it really, I'm at a point right now where for the past 2 years, I'm having to unpack a lot of ableism. I'm having to unlearn these things because I grew up as the sibling of a neurodiverse child, not knowing that I was neurodiverse. So I grew up thinking that neurodiversity was bad. And now that I'm more involved, like I always connected with my brother, but now I really see how the ways that he was treated actually affected him negatively. So I would just say, let them be children.
Mm.
And that's about it.
That was great.
Oh, thank you.
That was great. I told you we pause sometimes. So awkward to like. Okay, just to inhale and exhale that one. And it's great that there is more representation in literature. Did you see the new, what's it called? I think it was called Listen. Yes, you saw that. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like to actually pay attention to different perspectives. I do feel like it's important not to just listen to my own, especially since I am still unpacking a lot of ableism from my own life. Like,
it's embarrassing, isn't it?
It is. Like I catch myself sometimes thinking or saying something. I'm like, hold on, I need to revisit this. Like, no. And so I feel like people should be open to criticism. Like, it's not always an attack. A lot of times it's just listen.
Yeah, right. It's not an attack. Just absorb. I know when we first started doing the videos, I'm not great at like off the cuff talking, or actually I'm not great at like saying the right things ever, right? Like I just am not. Like whatever it is, I'm gonna either butcher it or I'm gonna say it wrong or it's gonna be unprofessional or something. So I used to have Kimberly, who was my friend but also my moderator / admin. I used to have her come on and I'd be like, can you watch this video and let me know like what I said wrong, or like stop me while I'm doing it, because like I may say something like this, I don't know if this is a word, infantilizing, or I may say, like, I've said things that are infantilizing before. I've said things that were, I can't remember. I don't want to tell all of the bad things, but like, it's embarrassing, right? Like I'm learning these things as I go, but it's completely worth it. Like it is completely worth it. It is what I want to learn about. And yeah, it's a trade-off, but like it is so important to just listen and absorb and learn from the people who know it better than us.
I would rather somebody correct me than just to let me continue to say something that is insulting. Like I have no problem accepting harsh criticism as long as you're not attacking me. Criticize away, please. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. As I have a brother who he uses a prosthetic leg. His leg is amputated right below the knee, and to me, like when talking about disability, learning about disability, you think even if you have a family like this who has physical or neurological or any type of differences, you think that you may know everything there is to know, or that you're saying something that's always right, and that's not necessarily true at all.
Yeah. Joe said, I always dig my lead holes with the best. Is that like a nautical thing? What's a lead hole?
I going into what he's saying, going into conversations, like you're saying something with the best intentions. But
okay. Maybe not. Thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you.
This was amazing, and hopefully we'll have you back soon, and you can tell us about all of the wonderful things you're doing.
I am every summer. I'm doing my questions. A lot of people keep asking me that, if I'm going to do the questions again. And that I definitely am. I just can't focus on school and that at the same time.
What questions are you talking about?
During the summer, I started doing a daily question under the Asking Autistics hashtag.
I didn't know that.
That's how I actually started meeting a whole lot of people.
It's probably, I mean, I just don't remember that, I guess. I don't know.
But I started it because when I first got into Twitter, I realized that I didn't know how to interact with people. I saw that people had the same experience as me or similar, but I was like, I don't know how to make friends. I'm horrible at making friends. And then I realized later on, like a year or so in, I was like, there's a lot of people who had the same, I guess, that same thing where they would come in, they were looking for community and they didn't know how to get involved. So I was like, you know what, I'll just ask a question every morning. So I never sleep anyways. So around midnight, I would just post a question. And I think at first a lot of people thought I was asking for myself, but I was just posting general, like asking questions under the Asking Autistics hashtag. And I really enjoyed doing it. So a lot of people asked me if I was going to keep doing it, and I am.
Well, I'm looking forward to that.
Oh.
I'm definitely looking forward to that. And you're going to do it in the summertime.
Yeah. I honestly, I just can't focus on two things at once. No, this is my last semester. I have this semester an internship. I'll be graduated. So that is my summer project.
Well, we will want you to come back and talk to us whenever you have anything new going on or whenever you want to. The book club is always open to you.
I'm definitely will be around much more. I've recently started getting back into Facebook more because, like, you're here, Tara's here, so
we're all in the house. We're all in the house. All right. Well, thank you, and thank you everybody else for joining us. I love the conversation.
Thank you.
I love learning about lead holes, bung holes. How do you know these things? Okay. Yeah, but thank you all for coming, and I will see y'all next week. I can't even remember who's coming on next week. I should know that, but every Thursday at 4 p.m. EST, which is New York time, we'll be on talking about all of the things, and so join us, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You stay on. I'm gonna end the broadcast. Bye, DJ. Bye, everyone.